Has anybody here ever felt busy? Okay, all right, yeah, right, all of us. Okay, bad question. We'll start over. Has anybody here ever felt so busy that when the busyness caught up to you, it was like a punch in the face? That was kind of embarrassing? Okay, there's still a few of us. Great, I don't feel so terrible. My story about that happened about 7 years ago when I was an intern at Cedar Creek, here at Cedar Creek, and this was in 2011, and I was in the production department. I was running sound at that time, and it was a really cool experience. I was working about 30 to 35 hours here, and then I was working as a security guard 35 to 40, I was a rent-a-cop, 35 to 40 hours a week as well, and then I was a full-time student at the University of Toledo, so I had a lot going on. If you would have asked me at that point in my life, hey, how's life? I would have said, yeah, it's pretty busy. I'm a pretty busy guy, got a lot going on. Now, I wasn't married, didn't have kids, and so I didn't have that element of busyness, but I was busy, and I'll give you a little bit of how my weekend went when I was going through this time in my life. So, on Friday night, I would go into work at 10 p.m. as a security guard. I'd go into work at 10 p.m., and I would get done at about 6 a.m. Saturday morning. I would go home, I'd get home by 6:30, I'd take a nap, and I'd wake up at about 12:30, eat lunch, go back into the church where I would run sound for the Saturday services. This would end at about 8:15, 8:30, depending on the weekend. I would then leave the church and go back to my other job where I'd work another 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift into Sunday. At 6 a.m. I would leave, I'd come back to the church, and I'd get ready to run sound for the Sunday services. And it was fine. I was doing really well until I wasn't. And this was a particular Sunday at the Perrysburg campus, and I was running sound, and just because it had to be this way, it was during the 10:45 service, which, if you don't know, is the most populated service for all 6 campuses here at Cedar Creek. So there's a ton of people there. I'm running sound. Our founding pastor, Lee Powell, he's speaking. And when he starts to talk, I'm like, you know what, I got some time. I'm going to sit down in the sound. I'm just going to sit down on the ground. There's walls protecting me. Nobody's going to see me chilling. So I'm going to sit here on my phone and just play for a little bit. And you know when you don't sleep that you're really tired, and then something starts to happen with your head and your neck, where the neck gets really weak and the head gets really heavy, and you just start kind of doing one of those numbers, and your eyes are falling. And at that point, coffee wasn't going to work because I had built up a tolerance to caffeine, so I had to do sheer willpower. I'm going to stay awake. I'm going to stay awake. And of course, I'm a weak person, and so I felt this amazing feeling. All of a sudden, I just felt like everything in the world was right. And I was warm, and I was cozy. Honestly, the best way I can describe this feeling is like if you're riding a unicorn through the clouds on a rainbow, and there's like a heart playing in the, it's just amazing. And then all of a sudden, like this, I woke up because my boss had walked into the sound booth, right, during my awesome time. And he looks at me and says, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, just working. I was doing the sound, working just like he told me to, just working it up. Everything's good here, man. You don't got to check on me anymore. And he's like, working, huh? Because looks like you were sleeping. And I was like, I wasn't sleeping, man. I was working. Everything's great. Is anything wrong? No, nothing's wrong, but your eyes were shut and your mouth was open. And yeah, I was like, okay, yeah. I was sleeping, but it was just, I'm a little tired. So we had a conversation. It was a great conversation. I got to go home that day. And but everything's good. I'm still here, right? I'm still here. I had to make some changes in my life after this because I was so busy, and it did catch up to me, and I realized I couldn't keep going at that pace. Now, I know that I'm probably alone in something as embarrassing as that. Maybe not, hopefully not. And if you have stories like that, you could send them to me. It would be great to hear. But I know that all of us are busy. All of us are busy. I hear this all the time when I have conversations with you guys here in the lobby, and I say, hey, how's life? How's it going? Everything's great. We're really busy right now with this, and this, really busy. Everything's great. I'm launching this, and I'm really busy. Now, maybe you're like me and you've heard this before. This is a really good one. So as we were launching the Oregon campus, I would talk to people at different campuses, and I had this conversation, this same one, twice, where somebody asked me, hey, how's it going launching Oregon? And I'd say, it's great. The people at Oregon are amazing. It's so much fun. It's so much different. You should come check it out. Obviously it's really busy because there's stuff going on, but it's great. And they would stop me. Both people, different people would say, it's what? Is busy? Do you know what busy means? I was like, well, it means like, a lot going on. Sure, I don't know Webster, but, I know that it means a lot going on. Like, no. It means being under Satan's yoke. Yeah. That's what busy means. And I was like, wow, that escalated quickly. But Christians, we love acronyms. We love acronyms. And in that point, yeah, there's some point to that acronym. Maybe there's something to it that when you're so busy, bad things could potentially happen. But we church people love acronyms. We use it for everything. And I'm really surprised that at this point, we aren't naming our kids in acronym fashion. But ultimately, we're all busy. We really are. We have a lot going on in our lives. And it's crazy because we actually live in the most convenient time to be alive in the history of the world. I mean, if you go back 100 years, maybe 120 years, and you try to explain to somebody the concept of a grocery store, they would understand it. But then if you tell them that there's a magical device that you can use to tell the grocery store what you want them to put in a bunch of bags and prepare for you so that you can drive your automobile there and you can park outside and they will walk it out and put it in your trunk, they would think you're crazy. Then if you say, hey, goes a little bit further because now you can use that same magical machine and their truck will deliver your groceries to your front door. I know, right? It's amazing. Not only that, you think about Amazon. Amazon is this incredible website where you can order something from pretty much anywhere in the world and they will get it to your house in 2 days for no extra charge if you're a Prime member, which is awesome. But it gets even better than that because this is a rumor and I've heard this, and it might not be true, but if it is true, I want to know more about it. So if you know, let me know. But Amazon is trying out drone shipping. If you don't know what that is, it's basically take a small helicopter, attach your package to it, and they deliver it to your front step. Right, I know, it's crazy. So I want to be a part, because it's like 30-minute delivery, which is amazing. We are living in the most convenient time ever, but we also seem to be some of the busiest people ever. And that's because we have a lot of people and a lot of things vying for our time as well. A lot of things and a lot of people want more of our time, more of our schedule. You think about the fact that now, even though it's super convenient that we have a thing like Netflix, we can also kill an entire week on the couch watching an entire series of television. And by the time the week's over, you go, gosh, I haven't changed my clothes at all. That series was amazing, right? We have that vying for our time. We got things like Facebook invites, where you're on Facebook and somebody invites you to something and you see it and you're like, gosh, I really don't want to go to this thing, but I'm not going to hit decline because that's rude. So I'm going to say maybe, and then when I don't show up, they're going to ask me why, and I'm just going to say, yeah, I was really busy, because that's nicer than telling them straight up no. So there's that. There's also like high school graduations. There's kids that are in school but also have extracurricular activities. There's the way Thanksgiving is structured now. You got to go to all these different people's places, and our lives are just overloaded with busyness. And so I'm really excited that we're in this series called Pause, because I think it's a super practical series that helps us to take care of the busyness. And today what's really cool is we're going to be looking at how to pause the hustle. How to pause the hustle. And our memory verse we've been using for the entire series is Psalm 46:10, in which God says, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. And so today we're talking about that, and we're talking about how we can use that stillness to pause the hustle. And the one thing, if you get one thing today at all, one thing, it's not that I'm short, it's not any of those things, it's the one thing you want to get from this message, it's this: to be your best, pause, and rest. So if you haven't written that down and taken notes, this is the one thing. To be your best, pause, and rest. And this is huge. And even if you're looking at going like, yeah, I don't know about all the advice that church is going to give me, I don't know how this applies to me, this concept of to be at your best, pause and rest, this concept of rest applies to you no matter what stage of life you're in, no matter what you believe, no matter who you are. Because all of us need rest. Nobody wakes up, or nobody says when you ask them, hey, what do you want your life to look like? Nobody says, you know what, honestly, my goal in life is to be in a marriage that I don't enjoy and a job that I hate and I'm not good at. Right? Everybody wants to enjoy their job, enjoy their work, and be good at it, and also have a great marriage and great friendships that are fulfilling and awesome. Everybody wants that, and I truly believe that a key part of good work, good relationships, good friendships is rest. And so to be at your best, pause and rest. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to take a pause, and we're going to invite God to speak to us today, because if it was just me, it wouldn't be as good. So let's pray. God, thank you so much for this opportunity to learn from you and your word. And I pray for everybody here in this building today that they would understand, that they would know, and that I would understand and know what it means to rest, God. Help us today. Give me the words to speak, and I pray all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Well, I'm honored to be speaking here today. It's super exciting, especially because of this topic and because of what we just came out of. Thanksgiving. And we all know that Thanksgiving is supposed to be a holiday in which we rest, we relax, we hang out with family, we eat good food, we watch a football game, and it's just chill. And then we get home and we could just put our head on the pillow and say, that was a great holiday. But for many of us, we know that that's not how Thanksgiving typically works out. There's not much rest because you're traveling from house to house to house, or you have many people coming to your house, so you got to prepare it. There's not a lot of relaxation because you always feel like there's something else to do. There might be drama and fighting, and you might get home and you might just go, my kids didn't take a nap, I've been to 3 different places and I'm exhausted. And that's how a lot of us feel during the holiday season. Now, there are some of you here that really enjoyed Thanksgiving and you rested really well. How many of you? Okay, a couple of you. Yeah, that's great. Well, then this message isn't for you and you can just leave. It's for the rest of us who I'm just kidding. You can stay here because you know, those of of you that had a restful holiday, you know for a fact that having a restful holiday like that reminds you of how powerful a good, restful day can be. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at what God has to say about rest and what God has to say about how we can rest. And it's going to be really fun, and I hope you enjoy it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the beginning of the Bible, because that's when God starts talking about rest, immediately. So I'm going to tell the creation story really quick. If you want to read it on your own, go for it. But I'm just going to give a quick synopsis, a quick summary of how God created the universe and everything on the earth. So the first day, God creates light and darkness. He creates light and darkness. Second day, he creates the sky. Pretty basic, creates the sky. The third day, he creates the land and the seas, and he says it's good. The fourth day, he creates the sun, the moon, and the stars, and he says those things, they're good. The fifth day, it's fish and flying creatures. Creates all those, that's great, those are good. And then the sixth day, he creates the land animals. And then he creates Adam and Eve in his own image. He creates us in his own image. And then in Genesis 1:31, it says, "Then God looked over all he had made, and he saw that it was not just good, but very good," because humankind is the culmination of God's creation. He looks at us, and we are his masterpiece. And that's going to be really key for the next part. But what he does is he creates us, he says it's very good, and then he gives us work. Before we sin, he gives us work. So work is a good thing. He gives us a job to do. And he looks at Adam and Eve and he says, "Hey, here's your job. Be fruitful and multiply." And Adam looks at Eve, and then he looks at God, and he goes, "Amen, brother. Amen." Now, wait, okay, it's not really in the Bible, but it's like implied. Trust me, just read it, okay? It's my own translation. Anyway, so it does say that, though. It says, "Be fruitful and multiply," but it also says that there's an actual job, govern the earth, name the animals, all that kind of stuff. There's actual work to do, and it's good for us. And we saw that God worked days 1 through 6. But then we're going to move to Genesis 2 and describe the seventh day. It says this, "And God blessed the seventh day." So the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all his work. And then verse 3, "And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from all his work of creation." So we see in this that the work isn't really complete until rest is involved. And there's a relationship between work and rest. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes it's difficult to know. Sometimes we put so much effort and so much trying into our work that there's no time for rest. But really, to understand and to experience the fullness of our humanity, we have to understand the relationship between work and rest, that they work together, and one without the other makes the other ineffective. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at what God does next, because next Adam and Eve sin, their sin enters into the world, and God has to start his plan for salvation to save everybody from their sin. And part of that plan was the nation of Israel. He instituted the nation of Israel, and from that nation, he says he's going to give us the Messiah, the guy who's going to save everyone. That's what's going to happen through Israel. Part of Israel's story, though, is that they end up in slavery under the Egyptian rule. So they become slaves, and this is for 400 years. 400 years of slavery, which is 158 years longer than the U.S. has existed. So it's a very long time. And imagine for 400 years, you wake up, you go to sleep, and you work all day. You don't get a day off. There's nothing like that in slavery. And so that's what they experienced day in and day out. And then what God does is he says, I'm going to free these people. So he frees them through Moses. You can watch the documentary with Charlton Heston, and you'll see as he frees the people with Moses, he then says, I got to teach these people how to live free. They don't know how to live free. It's been 400 years of slavery. So imagine if you went to jail in 1990 and you get out in 2018 today, how much the world has changed in just 28 years. We talked about some of the advancements earlier. You'd be in shock, and you'd have to have people help you reassimilate into culture. Now imagine that your parents and your grandparents and all the way down the line for 400 years had been enslaved. You would have no clue how to live free. No clue. So what God does is he frees them, and he gives them the 10 Commandments. And so some of you are sitting in here and you're going, yeah, see, that's what I like about this whole religion thing, this whole church thing, because it's all about rules. It's all about how is giving somebody a bunch of rules help them to live free? And you know what? I would tend to agree with you. I really would, except for one small part, and that's that we enjoy rules when they're in the context of a relationship. When we know that the person giving us the rules loves us and is for our own good, then we enjoy the rules they give us most of the time. Imagine if you're in a relationship. There's always unwritten rules in romantic relationships, like, don't cheat on me. That's a rule we want to follow, and we want our person to follow that we're in a relationship with, and it goes on and on and on and on. We know that this is true, that rules without relationship lead to rebellion. That rules without relationship, certainly they lead to rebellion, but rules within the context of a relationship lead to joy. They really do. So God is going to give them these list of 10 commandments, and one of those commandments we're going to talk about today is the commandment about observing the Sabbath. And this is in Exodus 20, verse 8. And he says this, "Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy." Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. So what's the Sabbath? The Sabbath is a day of rest. It means to stop, to cease, to rest. And what does it mean to keep it holy? Well, holy just means set apart. It's distinct. It's different. In the same way we call God holy because he's all powerful, all loving, all good. He is all of everything. He's very good. He's perfectly powerful. All of that we don't have because he is set apart from us. That's what he's holy. That's what that means. And so this Sabbath day is supposed to be set apart. Now, if you're sitting here and it's supposed to be holy and you're saying like, hey, one holy day a week? I got 7 right now. Those aren't holy days. That means you just need to get a job. Okay, now if you're retired, that joke wasn't meant for you. That was for the, okay, anyway. So he continues on in 20, verses 9 through 10a, he says this, "You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God." So 6 days over here of work, 1 day over here for rest. It's distinct, it's different, it is holy. Now, the Israelites, again, in slavery, they didn't know how to rest. They didn't get a day off. They didn't get holidays, vacations. They didn't get PTO. None of that was a thing for them because they were enslaved. And so God had to teach them how to do this. And there's plenty of scriptures we could look at. What we're going to do today is we're going to boil this down to something. And I know that this is going to be tough. I made fun of acronyms earlier, but we are in church. And so the guys, we came up with an acronym. We're going to use it. So, yeah, okay. So this acronym is super creative, and it's going to teach us how to rest. And this acronym is just R-E-S-T, rest. Pretty basic, right? It's pretty odd. We're very creative people, the campus pastors and I. So the first part is the R. It means release. The R stands for release, and it just means to let go of the things you can control, to let go of the things you can control. Now, I know many of us are like, yeah, but I know I'm supposed to let go of the things I can't control. And that's true. You should always try to let go of the things you can't control because you can't control them. But on a day of rest, we have to let go of the things that we can control. We can control some of the stuff at work on a day of rest. We certainly could work on our day of rest because we can control that. But we need to stop and separate ourselves from that because this day is separate. And we need to say, I can control that, but I'm not going to. We can do things like housework. We can do things like fold the laundry and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying you don't have to do that, but if that drains you, you need to probably just not do that. Maybe you're somebody who's in charge of the dishes. Like at my house, I'm the guy that does the dishes. On a Sabbath day of rest, what I should start doing, and this is a cool tip, is I should start using paper plates and plastic forks and stuff because then I won't have to do the work of washing the dishes or loading and unloading the dishwasher. If you're somebody who has to do laundry, leave the laundry unfolded. Leave it unfolded for a day or get it done the day before the day of rest so you can just chill. We need to release control. And there's actually been studies done about how a day off of work is actually one of the best things you can do, not only for your family, but also for your work. There's a study out of the University of Illinois that says adequate rest actually adds years to your life. It tells you that you can focus better at work when you take time off weekly. So taking a day off every week of work actually helps you to focus at work. And then finally, this one's really cool. Completely withdrawing from work regularly reduces the likelihood of heart disease, which is one of the number 1 causes of death in the United States. So it's good to rest. It's really good to rest. It's really good to release. Some other things you could do is that if you use your phone or devices for work, maybe you should shut those things off on your day of rest. Maybe you should use the new features in the iPhone and do some screen time controls and limit your email, limit your app so that you're actually resting and not engaging with work because the people need you. And that brings us to our next verse in Exodus 20:10, verse A. It says, "On that day, day of rest, no one in your household may do any work." No one may do any work. Now, it doesn't say this explicitly, but we can infer from this passage. We can realize that this passage is telling us that these people that weren't working, they weren't working together. They were relaxing together. They're spending time with one another. And so that leads us to the second part of our acronym, which is the E, and it means engage relationally. And all this means is that we need to spend time with the people that need our best. You need to spend time with the people that need your best. And who is that? Who in your life needs your best? For me, that's my wife and my kids. If I'm off on a day and I don't spend time with my wife and kids, it's not truly a day off. Because I love spending time with them, and they need my best. I can't take work onto a Friday, which is my day off, and do work on a Friday and be giving my wife my best. Now, the small caveat is that when you're at work, yes, your work needs your best, but when you're at home, work doesn't need your best. Your family, maybe your friends need your best. So how can you do this? How can you engage relationally? I think there's a couple different ways to engage relationally. And it doesn't have to be anything big. I mean, you could schedule something like, you have to plan it first. You have to plan it. So you could schedule something like, hey, kids, you know what? For before lunch tomorrow, we're going to make a big Lego kingdom. That's what we're going to do. And they get really excited about it. Or you can tell your friends. You could say, hey, dude, you guys want to have like a Fortnite? You want to get together and play Fortnite? Or if you're actually cool, you could play PUBG. You could get together and play PUBG with your friends. Both are nerdy, I'm sorry. Anyway, you get together and play games with your friends. You can go out to lunch, get a cup of coffee, go out to dinner. Plan some way to engage relationally on your day off. It's not an accident. You plan it, and then you can repeat these things. And that's why we love this weekend experience here, because this is a great opportunity for you to engage relationally with other people and with God. It's why we design our student area the way we do, our kids area the way we do, because no matter what age and stage of life you're in, you can engage relationally here on the weekend. So we need to release, we need to let go of the things we can control. We need to engage relationally. And the next passage we're going to look at, which tells us the next letter, is Ecclesiastes 6, verse 9, which says this. This is Solomon wrote this, who's the wisest man in the world. He says this: enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. So the S in rest is savor. It's savor. And really what this means is to enjoy each moment. And this is huge. How do we savor? I think there's a couple ways we could savor. We could prepare to savor. We could prepare certain things that we're going to really enjoy. And this could be even not on your day off. Give yourself something to look forward to every single day. So for me, when I go to bed, I'm really looking forward to the next day where I can wake up. Hopefully I can beat my daughter and wake up before her, and I can read my Bible and have my coffee, and I can sit there by myself and just relax. Now, she's getting really tricky, and she wakes up way before me now, which I got to put a stop to. But when I have my time alone with myself and with God, man, I look forward to that. Some of you might look forward to the drive to and from work because you get to listen to your favorite podcast or listen to some music, and that's just relaxing for you. Maybe you need to leave early so you can have more time to do that as well. Some of you guys look forward to coming home to your friends or to your family, roommates, whatever, and you love the way that your kids or your wife reacts when you're home. And they're like, Daddy, Daddy, and that kind of stuff, and that's enjoyed. So look forward to it. Plan on savoring that moment. But you also... you need to know this. This is good. I learned this the other day. And I tried to practice this before, and I'm not always good at it, but I really saw this in action. The other day, my daughter, who's 4, she is potty trained, which it's a weird way to say it. It sounds like she's like an animal, but she's not. She's great. And she's potty trained, but for number 2, mommy or daddy has to help her, to wipe. So anyway, she always yells, and I say mommy or daddy, but it's daddy because she always yells every time, and she's going to be so embarrassed in a couple years when she doesn't see this. She'll say, Daddy, I pooped, and that's what she says, and I have to run into the bathroom and, take care of business. Well, this time I just took my time because I think I was playing a game on my phone or something, and I just took my time, and so by the time I got in there, my 21-month-old son had a piece of toilet paper in his hand, and he was trying to help. Yeah. So my first reaction was, Easton, get out of here. Get out of here. What are you doing? So he dropped it and ran as fast as he could out of the bathroom. And I'm like, oh my gosh. There was no mess, which was great. And then immediately I went, oh my gosh, this is so funny. This is hilarious. And I'm going to be able to share this someday. So I ran out of the bathroom and I said, buddy, that's so funny. I'm sorry, but don't do that again. But that was funny. I'm not frustrated. And in that moment, in this story, I came up with a principle that I think I want to try to live out more and more. And that's this. If you're going to laugh about it tomorrow or the next week, you might as well laugh about it today. Savor that moment. Enjoy it. Because it's not fair to the kids if you're frustrated, or it's not fair to your friends if you're frustrated and then you can laugh about it with other people later. Enjoy that moment with them. You can't enjoy that moment. You can't enjoy that moment if you're already on to the next moment. If you're already planning what's next, if you're already living in what's next, you can't enjoy that moment. So you got to plan for it. And then you have to repeat it. You have to enjoy it more than once. And I'm doing that right now by telling that story. So if you see something funny that your friends do, your kids do, your wife does, your husband does, any of that, write it down. Try to remember it so you can share it again. That's a great way to savor the moment. So we need to release control. We need to engage relationally. We need to savor. And then we need to trust. And this, I believe, is the foundation of the whole teaching today, the trust. Because we know to be at your best, pause and rest, but how are we resting? And this is how we're going to define trust today. We're going to this is what it means. It's to be certain that God will provide. It's to be certain that God will provide. Ultimately, the essence of the Sabbath is God looking at us and saying, hey, you can rest. I've got this. I'll provide. We know that God can do more in 6 days than we can do in 7. We know that God could do more in 1 day than we can do in 7. And what I want to do now is I want to fast forward from the Old Testament all the way to the New Testament when Jesus is now walking. The Messiah, we talked about the Israelites, that was going to come from the Israelites. And this is in the first book of the New Testament. It's called Matthew. It's just an account of Jesus' ministry on this earth. And we're going to be in chapter 11, verse 28 through 29. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." This is simple. Are you exhausted? Are you tired? Are you carrying heavy burdens? It's simple. Just come to me. It's not a 5-step process. It's not a book you have to read. There's not a bunch of hoops you got to jump through. Just go to Jesus. It's simple. Then he continues on in 28. He says this, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy burdens, and I'll give you rest." Then he says, "Take my yoke upon you." Now, a yoke is just an instrument that was attached to the cattle that would help them to pull. Here's a picture of it. It helps them to pull heavy loads. And Jesus is saying, hey, I see the yoke you're carrying, the heavy burden you're carrying. I want to give you something a lot lighter. Take it on me. We might be asking, though, many people are probably asking this. What is your yoke, Jesus? What are you offering? Because I feel like I got this. I know I'm exhausted, but I know what religion's like. I know what this whole Christianity thing is like, and it's a lot of rules I got to jump through. I don't want to do this. So I need to know what your yoke is like. What are you offering? And he continues, and he says this, "Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So Jesus is saying, okay, I haven't gotten to the yoke part yet, but I want you to know this. You need to listen to me. You need to step in, because I'm humble and I'm gentle at heart, and I'm going to provide rest for your souls, which is much better than physical rest. Spiritual rest is so much more important than physical rest. You can be so physically rested and be spiritually drained. And Jesus is offering that rest, and he continues. He says, "For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." See, here Jesus is offering a yoke exchange. He's saying, hey, you're carrying this really heavy thing around, and you don't have to. You don't have to. You see, when Jesus came to the earth, and when he was doing his ministry and healing people, he chose a lot of times to heal on the Sabbath. And he did this for a very particular reason. When you read through the gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you read how Jesus healed people, he did it predominantly on the Sabbath, at least in the accounts we have today. And every time he did it, the Pharisees, the religious teachers, would be very upset with him, because he's working on the Sabbath, and they had hundreds of rules about what you could and could not do on the Sabbath. And Jesus looks at them and he says to them, hey, you've missed the point. You've missed the point. You've made the Sabbath something we work to. You've made the Sabbath our master, that we have to obey this thing and figure out this thing, and you are crushing people with these rules. And you've missed the bigger point too, and that's this. I am the Sabbath. Jesus says, I am rest. You've missed it. I'm right in front of you. I am rest. And I believe today that there's several of us in this room here that have been following Jesus for a little bit. You have a relationship with Jesus, but you've drifted a little bit as far as setting aside a day, having rest, having time with God, all that stuff. And so maybe there's some practical stuff you can use today to help you to rest better. Maybe you need to release control of some things in your life on that day off. Maybe you need to engage relationally better when you are off. Maybe you need to savor a little bit better. Maybe you need to trust God that when you start to try and do these things a little bit better, that the results are going to come from him. But there's another group of people in the room today that don't have a relationship with Jesus, and they're carrying these burdens into the building today. And you're sitting here and you're thinking like, yeah, okay, a day off, I get it, I understand, but you don't know what I'm carrying. And if you knew what I'm carrying, you wouldn't want me here. If you knew what I can't tell anybody, you wouldn't want me here. I got bitterness. I'm in a terrible relationship. The things that I've done to people are awful, and nobody will ever accept me for that. And so whatever yoke that I'm carrying right now, whatever burden I'm carrying right now, there's no way Jesus would exchange that burden. There's no way he'd take that. And it's the best news ever. He already did. Because we talk about how Jesus took on the sins of the world all the time, and that's a very broad way to describe it, but ultimately when Jesus came and he died, what he did was he took all of your burden, everything you're carrying, your bitterness, your rage, your emptiness, your addictions, everything that you have that you're embarrassed to talk about, that make you feel ashamed. He took it all and he died on the cross with it. And then he took it into the grave with him. And when he came out of the grave 3 days later, he didn't bring it out with him. He left it down in there and it stayed dead. And he's looking at you now and he's saying, hey, you're trying too hard. This is exhausting. And what I'm offering you is so much better than what you're doing. You will never, ever, ever get that burden off your back. You won't. No amount of physical rest will replace spiritual rest. And I'm offering you the greatest rest ever, me. I'm offering you the greatest rest ever. And so Jesus looks at you, those of you who don't know him yet, and he says to you, to be at your best, yes, pause and rest. But ultimately, to be at your best, pause and rest in me. And so if that's you, and this is the first time you feel like, yeah, I need that. I need a new life. I got to stop carrying this burden. Jesus is offering you a new life. He's offering you a new burden. And that's the love of Christ. That's the love that Jesus offers all of us. And I want to give you that opportunity today, right here, to ask God to help you to release control of your life, to engage relationally with him, to savor this moment, and to trust him with everything you have and everything you are, all of your sin, all of your shame, all of your mistakes, and say, I want to start new. Can you help me? And if that's you, I want you to pray right now. I will help you. I'll give you words to say. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I pray for these people here in this room who don't know you, who haven't known you, who've been carrying a burden you never meant for them to carry. God, I ask today, that you'd help them. God, would you take that burden from them? Would you take that old life from them? Would you give them new life? God, would you save them from their sins? And would you help them start new today, to release control of their lives, to engage relationally with you and with others, to savor this moment and every moment here on out with you, and finally, God, to trust you with everything. We know that you can do this, and so we ask that you would do that today, God. And we pray this all in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.